We are officially in September, which officially means that not only have I entered my basic fall era, but it also means that we have entered a particularly interesting time in the car market. So let's talk about it. Now, in this video, I'm going to be exploring some different topics, and so if you want to skip around a bit, there are going to be timestamps down in the description below. So first, let's talk about electric vehicles, because if you are an electric vehicle buyer, or if you're somebody who has been sitting on the fence on whether or not you want to buy these types of cars, then your time in order to do this and get an incentive for doing so is literally ticking away. As we've talked about over the summer, the EV tax credit is dying with the passage of Trump's big beautiful bill. This means that the $7,500 new EV tax credit and the $40,000 used EV tax credit are dead come September 30th, or the end of the third quarter. Now, it's important to note that electric vehicles aren't the only thing getting the axe. In fact, a lot of clean energy incentives are going to be ending at the end of the month. We just don't really talk about those on this channel because they are less applicable to the topic of the automotive industry. But another great example would be solar panels, which the incentives associated with those are also going to be ending at the end of the month. So if that is something that you are also considering, you'll want to look into that sooner than later. So if you've been wanting to make the leap into anything clean energy related that had an incentive associated with it, then you need to do this before September 30th of this month in order to claim that incentive. Now, in addition to just being aware of how the ending of the EV tax credit will affect the affordability and price of EVs and potentially other aspects of the car market, I also think it's important for car buyers to be hyper aware of the unintended consequences that the end of the EV tax credit could potentially cause. For example, will automakers lower their EV prices, sort of like what Tesla did when the EV tax credit temporarily ended a couple of years ago? Will automakers offer even more aggressive incentives at the end of the third quarter in order to push sales through before the EV tax credit ends? Or potentially, could incentives at the end of the fourth quarter be extra aggressive to sort of compensate with the fact that we aren't going to have that EV tax credit? I think it's important to talk about and explore the nuance of this credit and the potential pitfalls that come along with the fact that the credit is ending. And I don't think it's an accurate black and white assumption to say something like, oh, the credit is ending and thus you're going to be paying more for your next EV. And I think that while if you are someone who knows that you want to buy an EV, you should absolutely make that purchase this month before September 30th. I also don't think that if you are on the fence, you should haphazardly pull the trigger for fear of missing out. Because I do think particularly in Q4, there could be some really aggressive incentives to offset the lack of the EV tax credit. The next thing I want to talk about is tariffs. And this is a really interesting one, but unfortunately, it is a bit disappointing for the overall car market. As we know, Trump tariffs have been rocking the world the last few months, and the car market has been included in that. And while tariffs as of yet haven't caused consumers to pay more for their cars, it has caused automakers to lose a lot of money. Like, a lot of money. But this past Friday, a U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit ruled that Trump went too far when he declared a national emergency in order to justify tariffs, which is a ruling that upheld a May decision by a federal trade court in New York. Now, as of right now, what this means is that the courts are going to give the Trump administration time to figure out what they're going to do moving forward. And while many experts believe that the Trump administration is simply going to find a different legal grounds to implement these tariffs that could potentially be on the chopping block, there is also a reality where they may not be able to find the legal grounds, and some tariffs that are currently implemented could potentially be reversed. However, the bad news is automotive tariffs are not included in this, at least as of right now. The tariffs affected by this court ruling are only the tariffs justified under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. Automotive and automotive-related tariffs like cars and aluminum and steel were not issued under this precedent. Instead, they were issued under a different justification involving national security. So if you are someone who was potentially looking to buy a car and you saw this news regarding tariffs and you thought that it would make buying a car more accessible in the coming months, well, unfortunately, that isn't going to be the case. And I am still of the belief that I think over the next couple of months, we will begin to see car prices increase as a result of tariffs because these losses that automakers had experienced in the second and third quarter are not going to be sustainable long term, and automakers are going to have to do something sooner and later in order to compensate for these extreme costs. But I still think that Q3 and Q4 could potentially be excellent times to buy cars before these tariff costs really go into effect, or at least to the point where it would affect the average consumer. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is we are officially at the end of the third quarter, which is truly mind-blowing to think about. And when it comes to actually buying a vehicle, the best times to do that is at the end of quarter, or even better, at the end of year, end of quarter, which means that as of right now, the best time to buy a car would be at the end of this month, so the end of September, and then the end of December, so in a couple of months. And so if you are someone who is potentially looking to buy a car, then you will no doubt want to wait at least 1 to maybe 3 weeks in order to make that purchase. In fact, last September, dealership incentives reached a multi-year high at the time of 7.3%. And given the fact fact that the end of quarter is coinciding with the end of the EV tax credit, I do expect for that incentive to be even more aggressive this year. Like always, we will have some Manheim used vehicle data coming up in a few days. We'll have new vehicle data later on this month, and next month in the month of October, we will have some really interesting data regarding Q3, and will also give us a clearer outlook of what we can expect in the car market moving forward regarding car prices and potential increase in prices due to tariffs. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.